Thank you for joining our webinars. We will be giving 1 minute for colleagues to settle down, and then we will start immediately. As usual, we will start with a short video of LGMA and then proceed with the agenda. Thank you for your interest and patience. So once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, dear colleagues. Welcome to the April the webinar for local governments and municipal authorities constituency, hosted by ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability, in its capacity as the focal point of the LGMA constituency. My name is Yunus Arakan. I'm the Director of Global Advocacy at ICLE, and I'm also performing as the LGMA focal point role on behalf of our constituency. I'm delighted to lead you to today's 1 hour webinar. This will be today 1 hour due to some conflicts, and I will be joining with a number of colleagues that we have discussed before over the past couple of days with their inputs. Therefore, I didn't put all their names into the slides, but during this flow of the session, I will invite them. But I know Ingrid, my colleague, Ingrid Kotze from Cities Biodiversity Center will also join us as usual. Since the beginning of the year, we are also hearing updates from biodiversity processes. So Ingrid will also join us. In the afternoon, my colleague Kale will also moderate this session. Those who are familiar, these sessions are repeated every day in the morning for the Eastern Hemisphere, and then in the afternoon, the European time for the Western Hemisphere. The video you have seen, for those who are newcomers, I see a number of old friends or let's say seasoned friends, but I also see a couple of new names, was a short summary of our perspectives on what Paris Agreement means for us, for our constituency, in a short video. And then what I would like to take you through before going to the further details, let's remind that the session is recorded and later on uploaded on the YouTube channel, and you will also have access to the slides, downloadable slides. You would be also invited to type your input into the chat box so that you can intervene. We recommend you to stay until the end of the presentation so that we can have a systematic coverage of the topics. But if there's any burning issue, you may easily feel to interrupt, and then we can try to respond if urgently needed. Just for those to recap, the constituency of local and regional governments is one of the oldest in the UN climate change negotiations since '95. We are providing our inputs on behalf of our local and regional governments. We have more than 30 networks across the world who have completed their accreditation process to the UN Secretariat. But through our mailing lists and these kind of webinars, we are also reaching out to a broader community of networks of local and regional governments, so that it is not only restricted to those who are accredited, in order to make sure that we are receiving the maximum inputs from our constituency. We primarily engage in the negotiations process, but we also support efforts like the Marrakesh Partnership since Paris Agreement, which is a new mechanism. And of course, we focus on the COPs, but throughout the year round, we also provide inputs by participating in workshops of the UN bodies, but also submitting our views through submissions. And over these couple of decades, we know we have made a huge change in the process. The UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol did not recognize us, but with the Paris Agreement, we had a preamble that recognizes all levels of governments. Over these years since Paris Agreement, we said that time for multi-level action has come, because the Paris Agreement encourages or acknowledges us, and that was our expectation, that multi-level action would be enshrined in the Glasgow outcomes, and that's what we have achieved also at COP26 in Glasgow. Therefore, we are saying that now it's time for multi-level action delivering, which will be the new phase of the second phase of the Paris Agreement. We also have our information available on our website, especially from the pavilion to the updates, reports, or interventions. You can also check our webinars previously, or also our videos in our channels as well. Every month we're repeating these webinars. The next one would be on the 25th of May, and we encourage you to register your availability in our link, so that you can include this in your calendars as well. So let's have some updates on who is who in the process, because there are some new information. Obviously, we are always saying that this is a cyclic process. That's an annual process. The country who have hosted or politically presided the COP at the end of the last year is continuing to be the COP president, the Conference of Parties president. In this case, this is the UK government. They had already, on the way towards Glasgow, have created a number of mechanisms. Obviously, when they are relatively now in an outgoing mode, their engagement mechanisms and capacities are a bit limited, but still they are very active. And particularly, we can comfortably say that UK government is one of those who are really very, very aggressively continuing to continue the establishment of the channels that they have established, but of course less active than what was the case in last year. Now we have the new president designate from Egypt. We have a ministerial coordinator also announced, and last month we have met with Dr. Mahoudin Mohieldin, the high-level climate action champion. And I'm happy that in this slide we also updated this chart with the new logo of the COP27 presidency, which is now available on their host country website, which shows Egypt is now in full scale on track for preparing the summit in end of November or the beginning of November this year. We will get back to our relation with the presidency in the sense that, as we said, they have a bit, they also added new innovations. So traditionally, since Paris Agreement, we have the president and the high-level champion, but now we also have a ministerial coordinator, which is the Minister of Environment. Therefore, we as a constituency should be able to connect with each of those. And because presidency also has an engagement team, that's very, very, very helpful. We also started to interact with them. Last week, there was a call with their director of the stakeholder engagement team, with Mr. Asr Nessam. This was a very warm and even very, very lively and extended discussion with a number of partners from LGMA who have committed to work on the COP27 working group of LGMA. The discussion was based on three main agendas. What is the agenda of LGMA towards COP27? What are the priorities of COP27 for LGMA constituency? And what will be the inputs to the COP27 negotiations? And actually, that relates to the submissions. I will not go into details, but in the course of the slides, there will be already some hints to this discussions. But when we finish the climate agenda and before the biodiversity session start with Ingrid, I encourage our colleagues who have been in this call, if they want, they can also share their perspectives, because we already informed Egyptian colleagues that this webinar will also be an opportunity for us to capture the responses to their questions. We have already given them some information, but it would be good to make sure that it is well captured by all the others who were not able to join that call. Actually, now let's remember what we are aiming in COP27 is also linked to what we have achieved in Glasgow. First thing, we have a preamble paragraph of the Glasgow Climate Pact, which says we highlight the urgent need for multi-level and cooperative action. This is very, very important, because for the first time in the UNFCCC, we have a phrase called multi-level action. Before, it was our proposal, or some national governments who were within the UNFCCC, Friends of Multi-Level Action, they were using this phrase. But for the first time, a UNFCCC document, which is also a powerful one, Glasgow Climate Pact, puts this in the preamble. That means the time for multi-level action has come, and the multi-level action should be a core element of the delivery of the second phase of the Paris Agreement. We have made some progress with finance, especially on the non-market mechanisms. There is an opportunity for us to squeeze in. Our proposal is that, especially for the Global South, there will be a sustainable integrated urban and territorial development as a non-market approach. We are aware this year there's a unique decision to bring new NDCs. That's important. This was traditionally every 5 years, but now this is a unique year because Glasgow was not reaching to its goal of raising ambition enough. So that's an opportunity also to combine our commitments at different countries, more than 60 we have mapped, to bring their local and regional perspectives into their NDCs as well, or the commitments announced in COP, or including that race to zero and race to resilience, can now have the legitimacy to be brought into the NDCs. And Glasgow also resulted with an important package for action for climate empowerment. And these are all, of course, the UN decisions. Throughout Glasgow, we also have made announcements, interventions. Our pavilion was remarkable. And we had also innovative announcements from Scotland and Wallonia about loss and damage. There were examples like subnational financing or food and biodiversity processes. And that is all time to bring this back into the process. That's why our vision, and that will be our communication. We have already conveyed to the Egyptian presidency, but we are now aiming for a vision that multi-level action delivers. We are very happy. Egyptian presidency was very happy to see this or hear this, because they defined this COP as implementation COP. And for us, in fact, it is implementation already started, but the implementation of the second phase should be multi-level because it is now enshrined in the Glasgow Climate Pact. So we have 4 main goals. We have the multi-level NDCs. We hope some nations will be taking this forward, and we would like to push this as much as possible. We would like to develop our relation with those countries who have made this NDCs, multi-level NDCs, so that the Friends of Multi-Level Action could be much more stronger in the UN space. We have to bring those topics which were ignored in Glasgow, food, nature, culture, circular economy, lifestyles. These are all part of the agendas that really takes us to the climate emergency mode. These are mainly game changers in the sense that once you change your habits, once you change your lifestyle, then it also eventually leads to a change in the emissions. So I think that is an important topic. We will definitely support the subnational leadership on migration and loss and damage. One big agenda that we have been carrying with us since the beginning of the Glasgow process was that we want to convene a climate and urbanization ministerial, and we will touch upon this. There's a very key progress that is achieved in the last couple of weeks. And we would like to make sure our voice from the region, from Africa, from Mediterranean, from Middle East, is also strongly visible as well. Obviously, we would aim to make sure the multi-level action pavilion is even bigger in Sharm el Sheikh. There's one specific region, the Sharm el Sheikh, logistically and with this let's say technical conditions, it is much more convenient to focus on events inside the blue zone. We are in touch with governor of office of South Sinai, but we also have experienced such an example in the biodiversity COP in 2018. Instead of having a major agenda in the city, it may be more realistic for us to expand our efforts into the blue zone. This means our pavilion would need to be even bigger this year, and hopefully that there will be resources available. But all the signals show that the multi-level action pavilion, because of the COP outcomes and this connections to the COP27 presidency, it is realistic to expect that it should be even doubling or tripling its capacity, what we see in Copenhagen, what we see in Glasgow. As we said, there is a game changer. This is the UN Habitat Executive Board decision that was achieved, or that was announced on the 31st of March. This is a resolution, a set of decisions. It is part of the governing body of UN Habitat. UN Habitat is the UN body, which is leading the urbanization in the UN space. And the board, which is the national governments, which is around, I think, 40 countries, they have decided to mandate the executive director, Maimuna Sharif, to explore with the presidency, which is Egypt. The presidency means Minister of Foreign Affairs, of course, but other government agencies as well, to explore, to convene a housing and urban development ministerial on cities and climate change, to be held on the margins of the 27th COP, which means during the COP, to highlight the importance of climate action in the urban areas and achievement of national determined contributions. This is exactly what we have been hoping for, and we are very happy that UN Habitat Board and UN Habitat Secretariat has also been now putting this into the priority of the UN Habitat leadership. We will definitely be working with UN Habitat colleagues. I know some of them are also with us, so maybe they can give us some more updates. But of course, this is significantly important because once there is a ministerial call, like a UN agency, it's much easier to schedule this. You may remember the ministerials that took place in other COPs, finance, transport, energy. These are all possible once their responsible line ministers are also there at the COP. So this is traditional COPs are under the authority of ministers of climate change or ministers of environment. But with the Minister of Foreign Affairs being in the presidency seat and such a decision from the UN Habitat Board gives us a fantastic hope that this vision that we have been advocating for so many years is now possible to be operationalized or realized. And obviously, ministerial is not just a ministerial meeting or gathering, it has the potential to have concrete outcomes. Remember the first ministerial on finance that resulted in finance track of Minister of Finance. Similar things could happen in the urbanization track. And we also have additional opportunities to be excited about this. Egypt hosted in 2021, when we were in Glasgow, Egypt, Luxor was the host of the World Cities Day, which already gives them a very good connection. Egypt will also host the World Urban Forum in 2024, which gives again the notion that Egypt is not approaching this issue on an ad hoc basis. There is a very interesting, let's say, asset for our constituency. The Prime Minister of Egypt is an urban planner by profession. These are small and, of course, informal details. There's no correlation, but such a personal proximity to the idea of urbanization and urban issues is a huge advantage that we can leverage our work. Let's remember, in COP, we were having dialogue with the presidency, which was Alok Sharma, but there was an opportunity to directly interact with Boris Johnson, which is the Prime Minister of UK. He, at the same time, was the former mayor. Similarly, the current G7 presidency led by Germany is a former governor of Hamburg. So the leadership, the individuals play a role in such impactful changes in the global advocacy space. Therefore, we have to make use of it. Another important element, Egypt as a government has been working or demonstrating its own way of multi-level collaboration. For example, the government of Egypt, the national government, has supported voluntary local reviews of a number of Egyptian cities, which gives them the capacity or the experience that they have a culture, they have a practice of multi-level action. And finally, this is also in 2020, we will have the year for the first time, we will have an urbanization ministerial under the G7 president of Germany in Potsdam. So if there will be a strong Potsdam outcome, obviously there is no urbanization ministerial this year. We only have World Urban Forum. The next UN Habitat agenda is only next year. That gives us a huge opportunity that urbanization ministers could use the COP as a very important turning point in their efforts. While intervening, Anthony Pierce from WWF, Planned City Challenges, also praising this achievement. And thank you, Anthony. Definitely, now it's on us, up to our constituency, to expand or to increase our collaboration with UN Habitat colleagues. As I said, we have already been working with them for many years, and I see Bernard also is in the call, so that now it's time for us to shape how this could be done and how we can help this to be materialized. And Bernard, if you want, you can intervene now, or you can also come back in the afternoon or in the Q&A session. But we can also continue later on if you want. I don't want to put a pressure on you personally at this stage because we haven't discussed it before. But we are very happy that you're here. A number of things also are happening. So you may have heard IPCC, the scientific body of climate change, has finalized the release that they finalized the three detailed analysis of their working groups. Working group working on science, working group 2 on adaptation, and working group 3 on mitigation. The good news for us is that there is an unprecedented and impressive references to urbanization and subnational action in all these three groups. The 6th assessment report will be concluded by a synthesis report, which is in the making. There will be another process for that. But already, if we have inside the specific working group reports such a reference to urbanization and subnational action, it is inevitable that the synthesis report will also have a huge reference. It is really significant because this has now elevated our work. This will also elevate our work. IPCC reports are always feeding as an input to the UNFCCC decisions. And let's remember, in the 7th assessment report, IPCC already decided to prepare a special report on cities. And therefore, these are the building blocks. And that is again making us more and more motivated to expect or to push that COP27 should produce more, let's say, tangible results to bring urbanization and multi-level action into the climate space. So it's a good, let's say, a kind of a ladder that in every year we are making a different progress and then feeding into the other, so that we follow up and take it even to the higher level. So I recommend to each of you to have a look at it, but there's also good news. The GCOM is already preparing for a spatial summary for urban policymakers that will be developed throughout the year. And definitely now these information coming from these groups will now feed us as well along these lines. And through this opportunity, I would like to particularly thank all the urban community as scientists who contributed, but especially, of course, Deborah Roberts, who was instrumental since the beginning of this process to push the scientific community to have a better understanding of urban space. And her leadership in the IPCC, of course, helped us a lot to bring our voice into the space. And we are grateful for her leadership as well. Last webinar, we had a discussion on the preparations for the Regional Climate Week in Middle East and North Africa. I'm happy that if you look at the full calendar of these 3 days, you can see really a strong presence of the LGMA community. FMDV was a co-lead in the track 1. ICLE was a co-lead on track 2. SLOCAT and Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction led another session on the track 3. These are the official sessions that is not decision making, but still it is bringing more and more decision makers or negotiators. And plus, of course, we had our own side events. This shows that in this region we are strong as a constituency, or we want to be stronger. It was great to see some of our leaders from Chefchaouen, Mir Safiani, represent from Amman municipality and different countries from Morocco or Tunisia. So there is a strong appetite in this region. Therefore, it's another reason and justification where we have to be strong in Sharm el-Sheikh. And during the MENA Regional Climate Week, high-level climate champions, also Nigel Topping and Mr. Mohidin, Dr. Mohidin, also announced their vision for 2022. In today's call, if there are any colleagues who were in person attending these events, feel free to share your insights. I see Carlos here as well, and that if you have any updates that you want to share in addition, feel free to share here as well, either now or in the QA session. One final important update is that you may remember when COP was in Glasgow, UN Secretary General announced that he will convene an expert group for transparency and accountability of the net zero targets of the wording is non-state, but we know the exact word is non-party stakeholders, because the terminology also includes local and regional governments, and we are emphasizing that we are not non-state, part of state machinery, but in a different capacity. So this was announced, this group is announced. It's very, very exciting to see the former Minister of Environment, Catherine McKenna, who had been also very, very one of those ambitious to push for Paris Agreement and its implementation. So that it's good that she's in this capacity now. However, one thing that is really a disappointment for us is that this list of people who are in this group, almost none of them have a direct reference or engagement or knowledge or background with subnational level. I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm happy if I'm corrected. But according to what I read, that is not the case. Good news, the Secretary General has already announced that this group may be expanded. So I think this is again a mandate task for us as the constituency to approach the UN Secretary General to encourage him to consider including additional experts or representatives from our constituency, and we will be happy to discuss what could be or who could be the most appropriate person for such a purpose. And of course, it is up to his decision. But I think we have to spend some time and capacity and energy for that, so that our community is represented in this group as well. Because particularly the announcement says that they will also look at cities and subnationals inside this process as well. So finally, the submissions. Last month, we had good discussions with inputs from our partners from different networks and different agenda items. I know my colleague Kale, who had followed up with all our partners, that they would like to come back also in this discussions in the afternoon session. But if there are any of those who are part of this submissions preparations, they can share any updates from their side. We know because of lack of capacity, we have not made submissions yet, which means that some of the deadlines are over. But we also know that it is possible that even late submissions can be accepted. But the important thing is that these should be submitted before the next official UN negotiations to be held in Bonn, the subsidiary body meetings on the 6th to 16th of June. This will be for the first time in a hybrid format. Therefore, it's important that by the latest in mid-May or end of May, at least our documents should be communicated. Obviously, there will be a response saying that, look, we could not incorporate this into our synthesis reports, but it doesn't hurt. Even the late submission is good because the discussions are taking year round. So finally, our roadmap, as I said, COP27 presidency already have asked us to convey what they would like to hear from our constituency in terms of agenda in the next couple of months. Obviously, it's April, a number of things have already evolved, but definitely we would like to provide them an additional list. Already in May, there's a number of meetings taking place in New York, in various initiatives in Africa. For example, Afro-Cities constituency-led World Congresses are taking place. G7, G20 ministerials are taking place. And we have our own summits like UCLG, World Congress, C40 Summit. Urban October will be important. Daring Cities, as we have agreed, will be our last milestone in our roadmap towards COP27. We have agreed that it will be in September in Barcelona, in February in Barcelona, and in October in Bonn. That will be the two major opportunities where we capture our strategy and strategic planning for COP27, and then we will feed into Sharm el-Sheikh. Obviously, with additional information, we have an Urban 7 Summit on the 3rd of May, virtually, an Urban 20 Mayor Summit on the 31st of August will also be playing a key role in our work along these lines. Maybe now it's time for me to give a break. I know Ingrid is here. She has a presentation, nice presentation. I would ask my colleagues to let her present and share her screen, but just be aware, once these two webinars are over, we'll combine both of those presentations so that you can all go down in one file. But Ingrid, if you allow me, maybe I can ask if there are any burning inputs, remarks from our colleagues at this stage before we listen to you. But we can also come back once you are finished there. But let's see whether there are any inputs. Bernard has responded in the chat box that he is here listening mode, so he can answer any questions on this UN Habitat Executive Board decision, and he already confirms that he will be more than happy on behalf of UN Habitat. Of course, he will be more than happy to work with LGMA partners to support and make sure this cities and urbanization minister really becomes a major agenda at COP27. Thank you, Bernard, for your presence. Any colleagues, either from the MENA Regional Climate Week or from the submissions, feel free to interact, because in the afternoon, the list of participants of this call may be different. It doesn't hurt to repeat twice your positions or preparations, but if not, we can continue with Ingrid so that she takes us through the biodiversity agenda, which is also very, very exciting and very, very concrete.
Thanks. Thank you. I hope everybody can see my screen. And yes, as Yunus said, it has been very exciting. You will recall from the previous LGMA webinar, we reported that the intersessional and subsidiary meetings were taking place, the first time in person since, well, for more than 2 years. ICLEI, on behalf of the major group, local government and subnational major group, together with Regions 4, were given opportunity to make joint opening statements at the joint opening plenary that was on the first day, the 14th. And there you can see in the left hand, that is Jean Lemire from Regions 4, who read that particular statement on behalf of the group. And then I did on behalf of the group at the closing plenary of the subsidiary body on implementation, that was on the 28th of March. One of the things that we did as well in the lead up to when the discussion was going to take place on the proposed draft decision and renewed plan of action was to organize a brown bag lunch with several CBD parties together with the Geneva Cities Hub. And this took place on the 17th of March in their headquarters, just near the Geneva Conference Center. And we had their representatives from various parties, including EU, Canada, Uganda, Singapore, South Africa, and a couple more. And the idea of that was really just to get a feel of what their position was going to be vis-a-vis this particular draft decision. The draft decision and the plan of action finally came up. It was discussed, the first readings were discussed on the 24th. We didn't finish, so then it rolled over onto the 28th. And it was incredible. I mean, basically what we managed to achieve there, and I think it was largely as a result of the hard work that we'd done in terms of lobbying with parties over the past 18-20 months, but also at the Geneva Cities Hub and at the actual meetings, was that we came out with what they call a limited distribution document. So these are the documents that are ready to go for final negotiation at the COP15. And I mean, that day on the 28th, there were something like 20 L documents alone that were discussed. And ours, we were fortunate that of the whole bunch, and this was not just that day, of the whole bunch, and there must have been around 30, 50 of these L documents. Ours is one of probably 4 or 5 that came out stronger, with a lot of enhancements. There was a lot of interest from various countries all over the world: Brazil, Argentina, Morocco, the Philippines, EU, UK, obviously strongly supporting it, South Africa, a number of others. There was about 15 of them. And the contributions they made really strengthened our position. The one thing that is still a question mark, and it was simply because there wasn't time, the parties didn't want to agree to adopt right in the beginning until they'd gone through paragraph line by line of the whole plan of action. So they've sort of, we've got it's still in brackets, whether it's adopt or take note or endorse. We're obviously pushing for adopt because that is the stronger version. And that's what we're going to be focusing our attention on now going forward. There was also a considerable amount of media coverage that we had, besides the launch, which was extremely successful of the Cities of Nature Action Platform. And this is very significant because it was one of the very few paragraphs in the plan of action that didn't get touched at all. So it's gone through with flying colors, and we're very excited about that. There was an interview with myself specifically on cities and subnational governments and the work we've been doing. That was part of the UN, the CBD Biodiversity Beat. There's the link for you. I did another interview, part of a group of people that were interviewed by the Post-2020 Biodiversity Framework EU Support Program. There's also the link there. And then, of course, the whole time there was social media. We had Twitter tweets going all the time. Then the last real important thing there was the Global Biodiversity Framework. The decision there, because there were too many divergent views, and most of it is still in brackets, sometimes brackets within brackets within brackets, the parties have decided to hold another meeting, another intersessional meeting of the working group. This is going to take place from the 21st to the 26th of June. It will be held in Nairobi in Kenya. And the idea is there to advance the text and the language so that it is ready to go to COP. The date of the COP has still not been confirmed, but the working date of sort of, I think it's 28 August to the 10th, around about that time of September, that is still the working date. And obviously a final decision on that will still, a notification will still come. So just to say, there are some of the links that you can go and find more information. And we'll see, there was a very interesting demonstration from Avaz and a couple of the other NGOs. And this was just the final day. Make it a good fight and see you in Nairobi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ingrid, both for your updates to us, but also your success on behalf of our constituency. I'm so happy to see our colleague Jean Lemire and so many others. I think there is a response, or there's a comment from Susan Nolden. I can read this to you if you like, if you haven't noticed that. Just a second.
Yeah, I think she's just making a comment. Thanks, Suzanne.
So she is asking, on their website, CBT is encouraging to submit video messages in support of the COP outcome, along with the plan of action for local and subnational governments, which inputs to the new global framework should be highlighted by as many local and governments as possible.
I think the point there is that we want to strengthen the position, and that's why we will definitely be in Nairobi. We want to strengthen the position, not just in the decision, which I think we're fairly safe with, but also in the global biodiversity framework. We've got our eye on a number of the paragraphs and clauses there. The one is a new one that they introduced, the BBIZ. And then there's a couple of others, particularly in relation to things like resource mobilization, reporting, monitoring, and making voluntary commitments. So there are some things I'm happy to circulate maybe bilaterally to Suzanne, some specific messages that she could do that with.
And I think that again connects to our discussion on the climate space. Those who are familiar with the space, let's be realistic. The achievements of our constitution far, far ahead in the biodiversity space. That dates back to, again, decades of work. The first COP decision of the biodiversity negotiations was in 2008 in Bonn. That was a COP decision for cities. 2 years later, biodiversity COPs are taking every 2 years. In Nagoya in 2010, there was this decision was elevated to a plan of action for 10 years. And again, this was adopted by the nations, which is again showing the importance of collaboration with national governments. In the UNFCCC space, we are very happy with the preamble paragraph. In the Paris Agreement, we're happy with the preamble, another paragraph, or not even a paragraph, wording in the preamble of the Glasgow Climate Pact. So it means that while we're happy we're in the implementation phase, we have still a lot way to go, especially to be concrete in what does it mean for multi-level action. And that's why we have to increase our work with the national governments, those who are in the UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action that we have been calling. And you may have, again, remember, we have 60 countries who have made NDCs or climate plans more ambitious compared to 2015 because they engaged with local energy governments from Rwanda to Dominican Republic, from US to Japan. Most of them are also in the biodiversity space working with us, and they're also encouraging us to work with them. So I think as this is in our COP27 priority to make sure this multi-level collaboration, both in the implementation but also negotiations, should be increased. And I think we will make some progress. You may have seen just in the last webinar we had, you listened to the Japan Zero Carbon City Forum. There was the Prime Minister of Japan opening this video with a video message. We had the Minister of Environment of Germany. We have G7. We have G20 agendas. So we have a lot of ingredients. And with the urbanization summits coming up, both before and during COP, with the support from this Rio conventions, I think we could really make sure that in the UNFCCC space, urbanization or multi-level action could be a standalone agenda item if we can plan it well. And that should be part of our goal of our advocacy in the UNFCCC space. And there's a lot of things we can learn and inspire the other nations from the biodiversity space as well. There is another.
It's just a comment from Suzanne. She would appreciate the guidance. Post the question here to perhaps use the IBD together as the LGMA to have many other cities express their support for the post-2020 framework. I think, I think at the level of cities, what is really critical there, and I know that is something that the CBD is focusing on a lot now, is getting these commitments in. So, and I will put the link here to the action platform. It's really crucial to get those commitments in. We're going, we've got a concerted drive now to get more in than what we've got already, because that also shows what cities are already doing. So that's certainly at the level of cities. And then the point that you made, Eunice, at the level of the national parties, it's so important to work with them. We were finding towards the end in Geneva, what was happening is countries like Canada were out of their own coming up with suggestions to include local and subnational governments it got to the point where the chair at one stage, when they saw the hand go up, say, well, Canada, yes, we know you want local and subnational governments in here, you know, and that is, as you say, it's years of working closely with them and really, you know, they're taking ownership of it now. So yeah, look, we have a long way to go still, but I think the signs are very good.
And once again, let's remember, we also have to praise once again the leadership of Scotland, because of the Edinburgh process. The last 2 years had played a huge role. We know it was not that visible in Glasgow, unfortunately, for a number of reasons. But if you recall our agenda for Sharm el-Sheikh, we want to bring those climate emergency mode of topics, which is biodiversity, culture, food, and there are a lot of things that we can bring on the table. That's why it is important that our pavilion should be even more powerful. And for those who are in the discussions now, you may see the feedback from Susan. She's using this abbreviation IBD. For those who are not familiar with those abbreviations, it's the International Biodiversity Day, which is celebrated on the 22nd of May. And once again, it is true, and it's exactly the same discussion happening in the climate space. Even since what was the number? COP15, Copenhagen, 2009. We have developed our registry, carbon climate registry, that we later on now merged with CDP. It's now CDP Clay Track. The transparency is now the biggest discussion under the Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. And in the biodiversity space, cities with nature and regions with nature are our own tools that are bottom-up, developed by the networks of local and regional governments and subnational governments, and recognized by the UN, the CBD Secretariat. That's why it is important that our constituency embraces this and encourages more and more cities to use effectively and actively this platform, cities with nature and regions with nature, in order to demonstrate what are we doing, because it is really not so easy to go one by one. We're talking about thousands of cities, and that's exactly the purpose of having a one-stop shop or an entry door that is by local engineers and their networks to the service of the global community, UN, that shows the value of our constituency. So we encourage all our cities to use these kind of platforms in the biodiversity space, cities with nature, regions with nature, in the climate space, CDP Clay Track, and other reporting platforms, so that we can build trust that we are advancing. And it is true, some of the realities that we are not fully there. We are not in this level of ambition yet, but this is also an opportunity to justify that why we need support in action, financing, capacity building, that those who are committed should be supported much more than others. So Ingrid is putting links for those platforms. I see Carlos putting a long text. Maybe Carlos, you want to verbally convey, or do you want me to read?
Hi, Yunus. How are
Hi,
you? No, sorry, I was just commenting on the MENA Climate Week. You can read.
No. I mean, I thought it would be good if you can share, if you are able to, because sometimes you may not be suitable in verbal connections, but I'm happy to read. But if you want, you can also intervene yourself.
No, I mean, I was just commenting on the MENA Climate Week for the networks who were not present there. It was somehow a success. It was a premiere for the regional networks and governments. So it was a key moment. There was a strong mobilization from the Emirates and the Egyptian delegations. A lot of ministers in the region were present, ministers that are not usually present or active or visible in other climate weeks, especially African. And it was really interesting to hear about their concerns, to hear about the lessons and the obstacles they are fighting against within the implementation the NDCs in getting access to climate finance. There was a real call for partnering coming from the two COP presidencies, the next two COP presidencies, because of the huge challenge that organizing the COPs represent for these two countries, especially in this new phase of the implementation of the Glasgow Pact and the Paris Agreement. So there is a real will to collaborate, to identify actionable propositions in the margins of the negotiations to support, to support action and implementation. We didn't have much information on the strategy on financing they are working on. It's still unclear. The content, the wide array of instruments, or the focus of the report. But during a closed session between the host countries, UNFCCC, the champion, and certain delegations, national delegations, the usual suspects of topics for the climate week, for COP, was still reiterated. Of course, adaptation, loss and damages, facilitated access to finance, and innovative finance. There was not, during this session, for example, a strong call on climate and urbanization. It was not a key component of the discussion, but all the development partners that were present, the UN ESCWA, the World Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, all reiterated the importance of multi-level action, especially within the renewed country programs that they are focusing now on. So it's really interesting to see that move. Still uncertain about where we can fit in the concrete process of organization in terms of what kind of activities, what kind of initiative can be put together with the Egyptian presidency. But I think that it's normal considering the timeline. But it was a real openness. The only default in the organization was the lack of mobilization of regional networks, but it's not a surprise somehow. There were all the big international networks were present, especially the donors and the FIs, but we didn't have somehow our peers, our interlocutors in the region. There was not a strong mobilization. I think it was because of the erratic process of organizing and changing the dates of the climate week, but really interesting.
Thank you, Carlos. And that, again, all what you have said makes even more important about the role of the submissions that we have to work on, so that these are the concrete proposals that we'd like to discuss with the nations. Therefore, I encourage us to spend some time in the next couple of weeks so that our submissions are presented to this process before the negotiators meet again. And I'm fully aware the need for working more with the regional networks. I think that's another homework compared to Europe and Latin America. Middle East is relatively weaker, but there are some signals. We have to be able to reach out to them. And I'm happy that you were there, and we also had other colleagues, as we said, UCLG Africa, ICLE, colleagues like from SLOCAT, GABC, GCOM. They at least kept our flag high as possible throughout those 3 days. And actually, the decision of UN Habitat was on the same week where the negotiators or climate community was in Dubai, where UN Habitat was in Nairobi. Therefore, it's also normal that they may not be fully aware. Therefore, it is up to us to promote and prepare for it as in the next days and weeks to come. I think we are about to lose some of our colleagues if there is no more input today's agenda, we can announce that we have reached to our discussions. I see Carl Wright from the UK also mentioning about their work with the private sector. Definitely, it is something that UK, both LGA, core cities, they are also working. And definitely we have to bring back to this discussion about innovative finance, as Carlos mentioned. So Carl, it will be good to follow up again. Once again, the Article 6.8 and 6.4, these are the mechanisms that we have to be very concrete about what exactly we want to be achieved in this process. So thank you very much for all your time and efforts, and wish you the best. We'll keep in touch after the webinar in the afternoon. We'll share with the links, and thanks for all your contributions.